Hello everyone, lovely to see you this afternoon. And thank you, Greg, and the Media Clash team for a fantastic event. I've seen so many inspiring and amazing talks today, so I hope we can continue in this vein. So as Greg mentioned, I'm Maria, so I'm the Marketing Director at Ambitious. So we are a strategic comms agency based here in Clifton. We're about 25 people. We are founder-owned as well. And we cover a range of services, so PR and media, communications, corporate comms, crisis, content services, so come up with ideas, delivery, you name it, we're probably doing it in the communication space. And I'm joined today by Emma Brooks, who's Marketing Manager at E2E Assure. We've got Tasha Cameron, who's Head of Comms at Boxpark. And we've got Zoe Colosimo, who's the Chief Operating Officer at Neighbourly. So I'm just going to do a really quick scene setter, as I say, to talk about what we're going to discuss today, and then we'll move on to the panel, so I know we're short on time. So we've had lots of talk today about scaling businesses, thinking about your kind of core values, business objectives, how do you hold on to those? And we're going to talk about that from a comms perspective and a brand positioning perspective, and how you can focus on these things as things are changing in your business. So we'll talk about why you might be thinking about evolving your brand and comms. So it might be that you're growing in headcount, or you're moving into new markets, whether that's geographically or you're offering new services. And you need to take a step back and think, actually, is the kind of brand positioning that we have and the comms that we're putting out into the world to our customers and stakeholders still relevant and fit for purpose for the business that we are right now and where we're looking to move into the future? I'm sure we'll touch on kind of mapping your audience, so knowing who you need to speak to, where they are, and how you're going to meet them there is really, really important. Obviously, from a comms perspective, in terms of channels, social media, PR, press, whatever, you need to think about all of those things. There's a real big focus and importance of your vision and mission, remembering why you started this thing, where did you come from, and also looking into the future, but not losing sense of your reason for being and why you wanted to start your business. And all of this can play into your kind of brand positioning and your comms. Core values I've mentioned, really, really important, and generally just how all of this evolves. And I'm sure you're going to hear me say evolve quite a lot over the next half an hour, be our buzzword. But that's really what we're going to discuss today. And I will hand back to Greg, who's going to lead the panel for us.
Very good. Maria, if you'd like to pop there, that's all good. Somewhere here I've got some notes. There you go. So actually, I want to start with you, Maria. A lovely, energetic start to this session. Well done. That's all good. So when you're thinking as a company about how you're approaching helping brands change, develop, evolve, your word, what's fundamentally different from, say, when you're talking and working with startups as opposed to steady state existing businesses? What's your mindset? What's your approach? How is it different?
I think as an agency, and I'm sure this would be the case for other agencies as well, our approach doesn't change depending on the size of the business. You know, we're going to look at insights and kind of planning, and then think about creative ideas and rolling this out, and then measuring impact is all really important. I think the difference really comes in terms of the businesses that we're working with and their setup. So, you know, if you're a startup or you're recently scaling, you haven't got a massive headcount in terms of employees, you're not going to have dedicated resource necessarily to comms and marketing, PR, etc. You're going to have people doing lots of different jobs, wearing different hats. And so how we work with businesses changes in that sense, in terms of the internal resource, the support that we can give, the guidance and expertise, and how we can be best used within that business. I also think our kind of guidance around strategy and tactics you might employ. If you're a really large, well-established business, you're likely to have a big budget to go alongside that size in terms of your marketing spend, your advertising spend. But if you're, you know, a smaller business, you're scaling, you're not going to have those big budgets, and you need to think carefully about how you can reach your audiences and how you can create cut through and get noticed within your industry and attract, you know, whether attract investment or attract more customers and grow. And I think in particular PR can be really useful for that, because it's typically you know, more cost effective than advertising, and you can really create cut through and speak to those that you need to speak to, and get noticed and start to be seen as a thought leader and be visible within your industry and your market.
Although I gather that advertising can be quite cost effective when it
can
comes to
also be,
such
yes,
as Bristol Life. I'm simply mentioning that in passing. We're not competitive at all, not an inch. I'm going to come to you, Tasha, if I may. Yours, as described, we're talking about the difference between a sort of startup business and an existing business. Boxpark, in a sense, is both, because you're a pre-existing business, and of all days today, Boxpark is going to be so rammed.
She's got a train to catch.
So we've got a train to catch to watch football fans. Train to catch to avoid football fans, I suspect. But Boxpark is a brilliant scale existing business, but a new business in Bristol terms. Doesn't exist in Bristol. It will, but it doesn't exist.
It will, I promise
Yeah,
you.
I'm
Very
sure.
soon.
So
It is coming.
how is your approach to comms different in this city compared with other Boxpark areas?
I would say that we are very much against a cookie cutter approach. I think we find it quite humbling actually coming into new markets, because it's an opportunity for us to learn. And in London, where we've established ourselves, the brand, quite successfully, I think it's very easy to become quite arrogant and to think, everybody knows what we do, we're great at what we do.
Actually, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you, Tasha. Just in case people don't know what you do, nutshell on Boxpark, please. Thanks.
We are. This is always a tricky one because it's a whole breadth of things, but essentially Boxparks are huge spaces where we offer food, street food predominantly, drink, we run our own bars, and a mixed entertainment space. So that could be anything from music to sports to theatre to arts. So it's very much a multi-use space, and usually they're quite large-scale developments as part of regeneration projects. So we go into places to try and increase vibrancy, create better places for people to live, work and play, essentially.
Yeah. And sorry, back to the brand evolution point. This is a new market for you, or will be soon when you fully activate and so on. So yeah.
Yeah, it's really exciting for us because I think coming into a new market, we know what we do well. We know that we champion independent businesses through our street food for our retailers. We know that we put on a great, diverse events program. But what we don't know is what the people of the city really want to see, and what people's behaviours and attitudes are towards eating and drinking, and essentially what they do in their spare time. So there's a really nice learning opportunity for us there, and I think it's very humbling, and we have quite an open mind. So we come into to Bristol, it's really exciting because there's such a spirit of fierce independence in the city, and we really want to channel that and use that as an opportunity to stay true to our core of championing independence.
I'll give you a very shallow reference point for Bristol. In a nutshell, Bristol is Britain's Amsterdam.
What's that?
Take a view. I don't know. Who knows? Zoe, let's come to you. Briefly again, perhaps nutshell for those who don't know Neighbourly, and talk to us about, as a platform you developed so swiftly, connecting companies and charities particularly, but talk about your brand evolution and how you thought about comms.
It's a tough question to answer quickly, it really is. But hi, I'm Zoe. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Neighbourly. And that means Chief Operating Officer is Chief Octopus. I get involved in everything, and hence why I'm on a panel talking about branding and communications. We founded the business 10 years ago, and 10 years ago, talking about having purpose at the heart of your business was quite edge case in some instances. But really, that was what the business was founded to do. We, before the business was actually founded, was on a learning journey about if you can broker relationships between large corporate organisations and small community charities, then actually you can build the reputation of your brand in a way which is long-lasting. The challenge with that offline process was it was utterly unscalable, but very, very, very effective. And Nick, the Neighbourly founder, then came to the table with a great idea that if you can bring these two very disparate types of organisation into an online environment where you can have a marketplace where the charities say, this is what we need help with, and on the other side, you've got companies saying, well, here are all the resources we've got, you can match those two things together with great accuracy. And that enables the relationship to be formed in the local community environment as well. So back to the question, nascent in markets, talking about purpose was quite new. And we were too brave and we were too unspecific about what we were able to solve by way of problems for particularly our corporate clients.
Sorry, could I interrupt on that? When you say you were too brave, what does what does too brave mean in this context?
So we actually have designed a platform, built a platform which doesn't have any competitors. And that's really complex because you then need to explain to people, well, who can we anchor ourselves to? Who do we actually sit alongside in the competitor space? And so we were quite brave in our narrative about purpose first. We're a purpose-driven business, and we're going to help bring your purpose to the core as well. And companies are like, well, that's great, but my purpose is to make money. And so over the last 10 years, we have been on this journey ourselves, but also with some of our corporate clients that we've been lucky enough to work with for 10 years. And that is how you do bring your purpose story to the fore, and you do it in a way that's meaningful to everyone. It's become so important for the younger generation to know that they're working for a business that isn't just about earning a profit. It has to be there to make a difference for tomorrow through giving back to society.
And Zoe, I can see Andy Salmon of Bath University nodding furiously. I think one way or another, a number of our panellists and speakers today have been articulating that point about
Absolutely.
sense of value and purpose, rather, perhaps so. Let's come on to this as a question. Emma, talk about Eatery assures how its brand positioning and how you thought about the brand has evolved and may evolve.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Greg. So yeah, I'm Emma, managing director. I was going to say, I wish. Absolutely not. Marketing manager.
Hang on. Do you wish that? Come on.
Yeah, probably not. Marketing
for.
manager at Eatery Assure. We are a managed cybersecurity company, and although the company's been around for a little while, we're a 10-year-old business. From a marketing perspective, it's been quite new, so development of brand has been a relatively new journey for us. I joined the company just over a year ago now, and it's really at that point that our brand started to develop. So we've had a really fun comms period for the past 12 months of kind of doing startup and scale up at the same time with our communications. So it was a startup sense that we needed right at the beginning to get those communications out there as we changed direction into the private sector from the public sector.
Sorry, again, I'm afraid I keep doing it, so I'm going to do it anyway. When you say you have to change from the public sector to the private sector,
Yeah.
very roughly one of those academic points, compare and contrast. What was different in your approach?
So for the public sector, we didn't have a marketing strategy, but we didn't have a marketing team, to be honest. It was all word of mouth. The public sector, as some of you may or may not know, is very network-based, and it's a perfect example of it's who you know, not what you know. So the business did incredibly well through network, and then through investment, a commercial shift was required to go into that private sector. And understandably, our investors said, well, if you're going to go private, you need to have a marketing team. People need to know you exist. So that's where we've moved into this hopefully scale-up dynamic as part of our comms. And I think personally, from my perspective, I feel the main switch in that from startup to scale-up does come from that strategic point and knowing your audience, which I know Maria touched upon earlier. And what I mean by strategic is really having an ability to show the KPIs and metrics behind the communications you're doing. It's fantastic to go out to your audience and say, this is what we do, we're great, this is fantastic, do different campaigns, and get brand awareness out there. But unfortunately, when it comes to money, which all businesses run by, you need to prove your return on investment. So when it comes from a strategic standpoint with comms, it's setting yourself up to a position or in a position where you can prove those KPIs, and setting up communications and campaigns that lend yourself to showing those metrics and showing the success that you have.
Could I ask you, Maria, and indeed any of the panellists to join subsequently, but Maria, around this point about ROI, that in certain channels, it's more perhaps straightforward to interpret metrics. There are hard metrics. It's hard data of click-through rates, connections, whatever the iteration might be. But in other channels, when it comes to a slightly broader sense of what a brand is, which comes into PR, yes, you can measure the equivalent of column inches, but talk about how you communicate and how you set expectations with your clients in terms of ROI.
I think it's all about that, actually. It's having that conversation with your clients from the off when you're starting on day one about what does success look like to them from a kind of organisational business perspective, and then also, you know, falling out of that, what are your comms objectives? So definitely you have channels that are easier to measure. If you're doing kind of paid marketing, paid ads, that's going to be very straightforward. From a PR perspective, obviously reach and thinking about the titles and media that you're targeting, thinking about kind of backlinks. So in terms of SEO optimization, that's really, really important. Your kind of online reputation. So if you're getting online coverage, getting links back to your website, driving traffic, that's all really important, and we can measure that and kind of show the impact that has, and ultimately the kind of overall return on investment. So I think it's about setting the scene up front. We do that with all of our clients and kind of have clear measurement metrics for them, and then measuring throughout and demonstrating that all of these channels and all of these comms are having a great impact. And you're going to have the biggest impact and cut through if you're doing a mix of all of these things. I think that's key. So
the repertoire.
Exactly. I think even if you don't have big budgets, there are ways to have your finger in all of the pies and focus on these different areas. Some you're going to focus on more at different stages of your business and wherever you're at. But it's definitely possible across all the channels.
And just to pick up one point about there are objective metrics, some of the points you've made, but there are also subjective metrics. For example, there is one could overlay a difference between, say, coverage on Reddit or something compared with coverage in the New York Times or whatever. How do you, with your clients, how do you sort of play that back? Yes, you can see what the numbers are, but the numbers, they're not commodities. That number is not the same as that number, and we're not the same currency. How do you interpret that?
Well, I guess that's the commentary that goes around it, and that's where the kind of guidance and expert advice we hope that we bring to the table. But definitely, I think having media targets, and again, it's about what does success look like to your business. Obviously, New York Times versus Reddit somewhere, but within your business and your industry, it might be that a trade magazine or newspaper is the most important piece to you over the Guardian,
or a local magazine,
exactly.
Purely for example.
I mean, it is slightly subjective, and I think it's about kind of setting the objectives up front.
Setting objectives in advance, and of course attempting to report back against those objectives.
I think as well you can look at share of voice, and you can look at how you're kind of increasing that within your industry. And
I'm going to throw it open at this point. We've got our mic runners. That is a thing, by the way. There you go. Look at that, activated. Please ask questions. What I'd like to hear about, ideally, a couple of questions stroke observations from entrepreneurs who have developed, either with a creative partner or themselves, how you have developed your brand, the challenges or other that you found along the ways. Or indeed, any questions at all about stuff you've heard. So, questions and thoughts, please. Who's first? Don't all rush. You're not even faintly moving, let alone rushing. You can't... You got one. Well done. It's like a fish being landed. Well done. We brought Nick to the floor or something.
Can I take the hook out of my mouth?
Oh no, it's a bad metaphor. Nick, floor's yours.
So this whole world of marketing is going to be a new one for me. It's not something I've had to do.
Sit back. Don't jump.
But that is my question.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at all you gorgeous people and thinking, how am I going to choose? And I'm also hearing others, and there seems to be something very, very personal about the value that you bring to the work you do. There's something that some critical understanding that you have. You just get under the skin of this business you're serving, and you get that thing that makes it switch for them. I suppose the two questions is, how do I find the right person to get under my skin? And secondly, how do you scale when you have that rather very personal limit to what it seems to me is to be a personal limit to your skills?
That latter point presupposes that there is a personal limit, and I think just to perhaps to frame it slightly differently, we've got three quote in-house people who are in charge in senior roles within their organisations in charge of comms. And we've got an agency who represent a whole load of different clients. But if you could comment on that point. How do you find the right person or indeed the right company?
Well, I would honestly say it's finding the right energy. And by that, I don't mean is someone awake when you're sitting around a table with them, but you'll understand.
That helps.
It really does help. It really does. But it's the conversation you have with them. Do their eyes light up? Can you see they've got energy to bring to the table and ideas? Do they join the dots for you, or are you trying to join the dots for them? And whether you're in-house or whether you're agency side, I've worked client side and agency side. Always, 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 it doesn't matter what the conversation is. It's, can you see the spark? Can you see the energy coming from that person? Because you know they're going to go the extra mile if you can.
So my question is, how do you grow that?
How do you grow it? Well, it's the same as in any environment when you're interviewing someone to bring to the team. Always explore whether they're a dot joiner or whether they're someone who is someone who's going to perhaps just sit and take instruction. And there's a place in the world for both things. But if you're looking to grow energy, then it's It's the sparkle in the eye. It's the inquisitive nature and curiosity that I think I'd recommend you look for.
And to play that again, it's almost entrepreneurs need people who think entrepreneurially.
Exactly that.
And that sense of curiosity, joining the dots, and what if and how about. And that's the cleverness which you individuals bring in your organisations, and Ambitious certainly does and aims to. Yes, Christoph in the middle, please.
I don't need to wait for a microphone unless you want me to.
Yes, we prefer it if possible, because it's easier for others at the back and also for the recording, if we're okay. Julie Field.
I mean, Maria, you'll probably recognise this from a different perspective, but at what stage did you start to see your brand as a tool for your business, rather than just a sort of kind of a pretty picture that represented its values and stuff?
Can I just check? Christoph, do you mean Zoe for Neighbourly, or or Maria for as an agency perspective?
You know, for all of you really,
Okay.
is when you think about brand and evolving it, are you thinking about it as a tool, as something that brings you business, or are you thinking about it as something that you're just putting out there to represent you somehow
I see.
in the mix? Does that make sense?
Okay, I'm going to ask Tasha perhaps to go first on this. Thanks.
So I've been at Boxpark for just around 5 years now, and I think the moment that we realised there was a huge opportunity to use it as a marketing tool, the brand, was actually when we first ever did our live football screening for the World Cup in 2018, and that was when we realised there was mass potential for the brand to sort of scale in the UK, but also just to increase our brand awareness globally. And it all kind of happened by accident, but that turning point was when we had, I don't know, thousands of people trying to get into our, fairly 1,200 to 1,500 capacity venues from all around the UK, some from around the world. And we were like, how does everyone know about us? How did this happen? And it was, we kind of, at the moment, we didn't know, at the time, we didn't know what we were doing. It just happened by accident. But there was a big, moment where we said, oh, actually, we've got, I don't know, we had 550,000 people that wanted to sign up. This is huge for us. How do we capture those potential customers and that data to really leverage it and turn that into a branding tool? So for us, I think we're quite data-led in the sense of making sure that all of those customers over the years who have expressed demand for the brand and wanting to be part of that, we make sure that we use that as effectively as we can in our comms. So we have a really, really strong CRM strategy because of that. And we've then realised that because of that association with the brand over the years, and in this case with football, we've capitalised on that every year and tried to make sure that every year we do that bigger and better. But that's just probably the best example I can give as to how that's become such a big association with the Boxpark brand, and how data and CRM really come into that story.
Yeah, and to this point, so we'd like to, Emma, would you like to pick that up?
Yes, so to add on to that, if I may, I would argue that your brand should be everything you do. Your brand drives everything that you do. If you've got a clear mission, a vision, and you know what it is that you're trying to aim with your business, all of your communications should be singing to that in some way. As marketers, we refer to things as content pillars and stuff like that. But all of the different strands of the communications you're putting out there must have some link to your brand. And if they don't, I would argue that it's a waste of time. Because if it's not your brand that you're singing to, then why are you saying it? If it doesn't speak to your audience, why are you saying it? And something that I always try and come back to with everything that we produce is why. Does this serve our audience? Does this serve our purpose? And if it doesn't do either of those things, don't do it. And if you just see brand as a pretty picture, again, I'd argue you're looking at brand as the wrong thing. It's not just visually what you look like. It should be embodying everything that your business is living and breathing.
Zoe, Maria, any further points on that query?
Yeah, very, very quickly. I think I'm absolutely passionate that brand, to your point, is not about a logo. It's not about the language that you use on its own. It's how you show up. It's how you represent yourself in the community, and it's no accident that our business is called Neighbourly. This is all about getting businesses out into the community so that they can contribute and they participate rather than just being there to serve that community with goods and services. I believe passionately, if you're going to have a purpose at your heart as a company, you must be walking the walk and talking the talk at the same time.
Yeah, Yeah, and I'd just add, I mean, yeah, all really brilliant points. I think I've worked majority of my career in agencies, but I've also spent time in-house at a large national charity, so I've seen it from both sides. And I think it is definitely businesses and organisations that live and breathe their brand. They're really clear on their purpose and mission and their reason for being, and that is throughout all of their kind of brand assets and comms. There's a golden thread through anything. Through everything. Those are the ones that are most successful, those are the ones that have the greatest cut through and that people are going to remember. So I think seeing it from both sides and definitely the success comes from that, making sure that you're really consistent and clear, and that all your employees are as well, because they're a massive asset for you. Employer brand is really important as you're a scaling business, and I think if everyone's clear on why they're doing what they're doing and that everything that they're working on speaks to kind of one mission, and you have really clear key messages internally and externally, then everyone's happy and everyone's kind of focusing on the future and where you're going to.
Brand simultaneity and it all happening consistently, same voice, amplifying, etc. absolutely makes sense in that. No, that's not very good. In a current linear sense. But what about over time? So, for example, Charlie Bigham's business, 25-year business or some such. When you've got a brand which, certainly in terms of scale, in his case, is quite markedly different, but at the core the offering is the same. How important is it you have brand continuity over time as well as simultaneously?
Should I?
Yeah, have a go. I don't know what it means.
I think it's really important. I think being consistent is, also you build brand equity. So over time, it's amazing if someone can recall and knows your brand, and teach this some marketing things, but if you show a logo and you don't know the name and someone can just recall what it is, that they're doing their job right, you can dream of getting to that point. I think the challenge is then also being seen as being a bit old hat, depending on the industry that you're in. People might feel like you're not at the cutting edge because you've been around 20-25 years, and so they know your brand, but actually that starts to work against you potentially. But if you're always kind of innovating and reviewing your proposition and thinking about what is it that we're doing and how are we communicating ourselves, I don't think it's about starting from scratch ever, because you have that brand equity. It's about evolving, growing and building on what you already have and building on the best bits and maybe tweaking and changing the things that aren't working for you so much now. So it changes over time.
I'd like you each, but particularly Maria, to comment on this point. And I'm speaking personally here. I've found that a company, a brand, a value, logo being the very front end, it's very hard I find very hard to consider changing, because that is part of what I think this company is. And I will give a shout out to Jane, my wife, who joined the own Media Clash. She's very adept at realising you've got to refresh. How do you get over that, putting me aside, how do you get over that with entrepreneurs who are wedded to X when you're thinking, come on, you've got to be moving?
Data, I guess, showing that the impact
Maybe.
that something's gonna have. If you doing research as well, I think really important upfront. Kind of, I mentioned right at the beginning, but mapping your audiences, stakeholder mapping, as things are growing and you're changing and adapting. You want to target 18 to 25-year-olds so and so in this city. Okay, well, what media are they consuming? How are they communicating? If they're on younger, but if they're on TikTok and you're not, and you need to target those people, then maybe you need to start a TikTok channel. That's a conversation lots of brands will be having, have been having and having right now. So I think you need to be adaptable. You need to look at the things that are changing in the market and be willing, but it doesn't mean you have to give up your logo or your name, or and I don't think you should do that. I really don't think you should do that. It's just about refreshing. Lots of businesses and brands do a brand refresh every 5, 10 years, something like that. But they'll never start from scratch. They'll just tweak things. They'll change colours, and it's all about the research that they've done.
And you never know, we might even be doing that with LaunchConf at some point. Who knows? Any closing thoughts on the panel? Zoe, do you want to pick up that point?
Picking up on that line of thinking, that over the years we've been trading into a very strange environment, haven't we? And it's not been your stereotypical wonderful trading conditions for the last 10 years, and we've been through a pandemic, wars and a cost of living crisis, and certainly for us in our brand communications it's been a real challenge, because today 20% of the UK population live in poverty, and that is an astonishing fact. And a lot of what we do is supporting local good causes in the community to get help distributed, and we do a lot of food redistribution. I'm gutted that Charlie's not here, because I was going to have a chat with him. But it's, for us, how do we keep that messaging really relevant in this perma-crisis? People have started to get tired of hearing about all the things that are wrong in the world. So it's how do we reframe those challenges in a way that become understandable, acceptable and actionable, so people think, right, okay, I know my business can help. I know this charity around the corner, and we can add value to what they're doing.
We're just light on time. That's clock's ticked to 0. I'm going to finish with Maria, if I may. And Maria, maybe some closing thoughts and some key learning. I don't know if you want to grab that.
And I know we're out of time, so I will.
You can come stand here if you like, if it makes it easier.
Talked
I'll stand away.
about most of this, but I guess really a strong brand, it can open doors right in the beginning, but it's your reputation in the long term that's going to sustain you. So really key things, thinking about your online reputation, how people are searching for you and seeing you, and your reputation in the media as well, if that's important, or you're at that point. We talked about this, always recognising your why did you start the business, but don't get caught up in jargon and presuming that people know who you are or what you're about. You need to speak plainly. Evolve, don't kind of start from scratch. I've mentioned that, so it's very rare that you need to just scrap everything, just build and focus on what does work and change what doesn't and doesn't suit you where you are now. Understanding your audiences is really important. Having a golden thread through everything, your brand assets and comms, we've talked about that, that's really key, and that's going to keep you kind of staying true to your core as well and your core values. Thinking about external factors, we've talked about that as well, so we've done a good job. It's really about kind of influencing what you can, but moving with the times. And as I said as well, always remembering your employees are really, really important, and they're going to be your biggest advocates. We have an ebook which you can access on this QR code should you like to. So if you want a bit more detail about the ways that PR and comms can help your scaling business, there's a lot more detail contained within this, 7 ways in detail. And if you wanted to chat to me afterwards, then do so. But yeah, thank you so much, Greg, and for our panel for joining us today.
Please do. So please thank Zoe, Tasha and Emma, and good luck with developing your brand. And thank you to Maria indeed. Thank you so much. Thank you.